The 2020 elections are coming up, and politics are as controversial as ever in the United States. Political polarization is as high as ever, and it seems that who wins the election is a matter of life and death among Americans. But doesn't everyone want what's best for the country? Why do political parties even exist? How do they come about? Are they even good for the nation? All of these questions will be answered in this video. When George Washington gave his final address as President of the United States, one of his biggest warnings was to avoid forming political parties. Unfortunately, he was too late. And I have a feeling that he knew that. By that time, two political parties had already emerged, the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. The Federalists believed in having a strong federal government and a loose interpretation of the Constitution. The Democratic Republicans, on the other hand, believed more in stronger state governments and a more strict interpretation of the Constitution. The point is, two major opposing forces had already been formed in such a new nation. Over the years, there have been many parties, the Whigs, Know-Nothings, and Libertarians, just to name a few. But the two main parties are the Democrats and the Republicans, and it's been that way for the past 170 years now. Both of these parties have changed dramatically throughout the years, with the Democrats becoming far more liberal and the Republicans becoming more conservative. But just how different are they, and how different have they always been? Political polarization is how different political views and stances are from one party to another. In recent times, Democrats have become even more left-leaning, and Republicans have become even more right-leaning. Now, what does left or right even mean? Well, the left is liberal, and it tends to lean more towards socially progressive policies and government aid towards the less fortunate. An example of liberal policy is expanding LGBTQ rights or increasing the minimum wage. The right is more conservative, and a conservative policy would be something like lowering taxes on the wealthy or restricting immigration. In recent times, these differences in opinion between parties have grown wider and wider, and with that, people are starting to align their opinions more closely to that of the party they associate with. These increased differences in opinion have led to increased disdain that each party member has for the other. Studies show that 35% of Republicans would be angry if their child married a Democrat, and 45% of Democrats would be angry if their child married a Republican. An incredible 78% of Americans believe that political parties are pushing people apart. So why do they exist? Are they even necessary? Or do they do more harm than good? Political parties actually have a lot of positives that they bring to the country. For one, they create checks and balances. Political parties make it so that no single person or group has control over the country, and negotiations between people with opposing views have to be regularly done so that a compromise can be found. Also, they water down special interest investments. If not for political parties, the candidate with the most money behind them would probably end up winning elections and gaining power. Political parties bring like-minded people together, and so they help people know who to vote for based on their values, as opposed to just who advertises to them the most. And that brings the most important reason for the existence of political parties. It gives people a set of ideals to support. There are over 300 million people in the United States, and there is no way to create a policy that will please every single one of them. Political parties create a sort of middle ground that makes it easier to enact policies that the majority of the country is in favor of. They encourage people to take part in all levels of the government. So now that we can acknowledge the necessity for political parties, how can we as a people accept our differences in opinion and not let political polarization create a divided nation? Now let's get one thing straight. When I say accept our differences in opinion, I don't mean that you should be friends with someone even if they're a racist or a bigot. But if you and your cousin have different views on government involvement in the economy, don't let it ruin your relationship. Now these are two extremes, and the issue is, in politics, there's a large gray area that a lot of issues fall into. Politics is literally an issue of life or death. and it focuses on a lot of very serious topics. If two people disagree so greatly on something, one may view them as irreconcilable because they have completely different moral codes. But that's just not true, because humans are far more complex than that. People are more than just their political views. If you hold an opinion on one thing, that doesn't define who you are as a person. Nobody in the world is perfect, and all people are a combination of good and bad. If people work harder to try and understand each other as people, more than just their opinions on certain topics, then there'll be a lot more kindness and empathy between the nation's citizens, and there's an absolute necessity for that. Political parties are a flawed system, and political polarization is especially high. However, political parties are an integral part of our democracy and give the people a voice in their government. People are at each other's throats more than ever, but at the end of the day, if we remember that we're all people and we're all on the same team and we're more than just our opinions, then not only will there be less discord between Americans, but the policies will reflect that as well. Happy voting!